Welcome everyone, I hope you are doing well. Today we will go over React through several chapters. In the first chapter we will describe what React is. We will go over its history, how it was created, and what it is about. In the second chapter we will learn how to install it and decide which code editor we will use. And in the third chapter we will learn how to use React with a little sample code. That concludes this video and I'll see you in the next one for the first chapter. Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well, and welcome to this React tutorial. What is React? React.js is a JavaScript techno created in 2013 by Facebook teams, but it is not a framework per se. In fact, it is more of an open source library that allows you to build dynamic user interfaces. To code in React, you need to have a good JavaScript background, of course. There are several platforms that are created in React, like Netflix, Instagram, and Tesla. We will take the Netflix website as an example, as this application is very interactive and works quite well. It is easy to use and we don't have to wait for any of our pages to load. If we go to the My List page, the transition happens almost instantly and we're not going to wait for a page to load here. I'll leave you to it and I'll see you in the next video, which is how to install React. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we will see how to install React. First you'll have to download the LTS version, which is the recommended version anyway, so you can just take that one. Then you install it. I'm not going to because I already have it on my computer, but you have to do it. Then if it's done, you can leave the page and then open your command prompt. You can find it on the little Windows icon here, or in the search bar. You tap command prompt and you will find it. So we end up on our command prompt, and what we are going to do is create a new project. Start by writing mkdir react project. Then we will write cd react project. By doing that, we create a folder, and in this folder, we will manage to put our project my app. Then we will write create-react-app. Then you type enter, and there we have it. It has been created. Then to install it, we'll do npx create-react-app, then space my-app. There you go. You tap enter and it will install itself. It can take a while, so you have to be patient. With mkdir, we created a new directory, and in this directory, we put React project and then we create the React app, which will allow us to have all the files. Then, when everything is installed, you tap cd my app, with a dash of course. Here you see Mathieu React project my app, so we know in which folder it is. Then you put npm start. This will open a page that will say localhost 3000, and that means you have installed React. Then, in order to stop the localhost, you tap Ctrl+C in the command line, of course, to close the React application. You have installed React and created a new folder. Now we will check that together. We'll have a look here. So we'll go here on user, then Mathieu. Here you have my app, which has been created here at 10:01 a.m. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it and move it to the desktop. Then we'll open VS Code, which allows us to take our file and send it right here to our code editor. Well, there, as you can see, everything is installed, as well as my app, which is the application that we just installed. You have all the folders on your VS Code, plus the localhost, which is on your browser. Thank you for watching this video on how to install React. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and I wish you a very good day. Hello again. In this part, I'm going to show you a small example of code. I'm going to do a very simple code so that everyone can understand. First, what we're going to do is change the color and put it directly in white. Here I'm saving the progress. Now what we're going to do is going into the app.js, and below div class name we're going to put a small h1, and in this h1 we're going to mark hello world. We're going to save, and here it is, hello world is displayed. Then another quick and very easy example, we'll do the same, we'll just mark this time a p, and in this p we'll mark course React.js. And here you see we have our h1 which is displayed here and our course React.js which is displayed here. Now I'll leave it up to you. Good luck for your projects, and Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. We're meeting again today for a new video in which we're going to talk about let and const. So let and const are two keywords that you're going to see quite often in this course, and especially const. Let and const are different ways of creating variables. I think you already know var. Var creates variables in JavaScript. Now the thing is that some variables never change. They're what we call constants. Technically they are just variables because JavaScript only knows var. With ES6, a version of JavaScript, two different keywords have been introduced. They are let and const. Var still works, but you are strongly encouraged to use let and const. In fact, let is so to speak the new var. You use it for variable values. But the most important solution here is to use let if you want to create a variable that has variable values, and const if you plan to create a constant value, something that you assign only once and never change. And this is the case more often than you think. So in this course, you'll never see var. You will only see let and const, and especially const. So it shouldn't confuse you. It's just the same as var, but in a more modern way. And in the case of const, although it's clearly stated, it's never going to get a new value. Now, since this is always a little bit clearer in practice, let's take a look at it. For that, it's better to use jsbin.com. It's another web editor that makes it easy to enter JavaScript and use some console output. Disable the HTML and the output up there, and instead enable JavaScript and the console. It's very simple to do it. You have the HTML and JavaScript, you just have to click on the little HTML and it won't be there anymore. And you can leave the JavaScript as it is. Now that you have activated JavaScript, then you have the console on the right, we can start. From here, we will be able to create a variable. We will be able to create our little piece of code. We will write var, my name, with capital N, it's very important, equal, and we will write my first name, Mathieu, with capital M. And of course, don't forget the semicolon. Then, underneath, we will write console.log, my name, always with capital N, don't forget that. And if we press run, it will write Mathieu here, it will write what has been put here. And of course, we can also do my name, equal Mathieu, semicolon, and write the same console log, but imagine we will mark Lucy, so I deleted everything. And if we put Lucy with Mathieu, it will give us Mathieu, Lucy here. So we can write in different ways. Now, if we switch the var here for let, and we delete it and put run again, it still works, as you can see. It still works, it shows Mathieu and Lucy. But on the other hand, if I switch and I want to put const, it will display an error message, because we are trying to reassign a constant variable, which is kind of a strange name. You can say that it should never get a new value, and if you write some code that you reassign, you get the error and therefore a chance to improve your code. I hope you understood this little course on let and const. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Welcome to this new video in which we'll talk about arrow functions. This is a different syntax for creating JavaScript functions. A normal JavaScript function looks like this. You may also notice a syntax where you have var myfunc equal to function. Now an arrow function looks like this. Here I store it in a constant and then on the right side of the equal sign. This is the syntax of the arrow function. A list of arguments is nothing, but it can contain arguments and then an arrow. So an equal sign and a greater than sign, then the body of the function. The function syntax arrow is a bit shorter than the normal syntax because it omits the keyword function. And this is also a huge advantage as it solves a lot of problems you have often encountered with it. If you have done any work with JavaScript, you probably know that the keyword this doesn't always refer to what you might expect when writing your code. When you use this in an arrow function, it will always retain its context and not change it at runtime. Now, let's move on to JSBin. Let's create a normal function, print my name like this. Now here, we can of course display the log name of the output console and the pass name as an argument. Now we will write print my name, and in it we will put our first name, Mathieu. We have Mathieu. Now the equivalent of the arrow function is to store it as a constant named print my name. It could also be created with let if you plan to reassign this variable print my name as a constant. Now don't forget to add this arrow between the argument list and the function body. If you delete and rerun this operation, you will still see Mathieu. So here it behaves exactly the same. Now the keyword thing is something that you will see throughout the course. It becomes important once you add functions to objects. First, let me show you some alternatives to this syntax, as far as the argument list is concerned. To be precise, if you only get one argument, like this, if you only get one argument, like we do here, you can also use a shortcut to omit the parentheses. This is only valid for exactly one argument, not for more and not for less. Here you will always get the same result. If you had a function that received no arguments, you would need parentheses. So name and age like this won't work. You have to put this in parentheses. And now you can write name and age and pass both of them as arguments here. So these are two different syntaxes that you might see regarding arguments. There is also an alternative. So on the right side of the arrow, obviously many functions return something. So let's say here that we actually want to multiply something and we get a number as an argument. Now we want to return the number 2. Obviously what we can do is we can record by recording the results of the multiplication. So what is returned by multiply and pass the 2 here. If I now delete this and run it, we should see 4. If you have this case where everything you do in the body of your function is returned and you don't have any other code, you can omit the braces, write it on one line and the return keyword as well. This is a very short version of the writing of this function. It gets a little bit shorter if we take advantage of the shortcut to remove the parentheses surrounding the single argument. And now it always returns the result of this code. Here we simply omit the return keyword and we've omitted 2 of them. And we have a very concise way and short way to write a function that takes one or more arguments and returns something. So here, deleting and running this still gives you 4. So that's all the syntax you can see, and the arrow function in general is something you will see a lot. You've seen the different syntaxes, you don't have to remember them all now, just know that there are different syntaxes, and if we use them next, they'll come back to you quickly. And you'll know why we use a data syntax. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Another feature offered by next-generation JavaScript is the ability to write modular code so that the JavaScript code can be split into several files. Of course, we can already split our code into several files, we just need to import them in the right order into our HTML files. The idea behind the export and import statements and the so-called modules is that in one JavaScript file we can import the content of another file so that the JavaScript files themselves know their dependencies. It's supposed to look like this. We have a file person.js and here we have this constant person that is stored as a JavaScript object. And this is where it gets interesting. We export this keyword with default. This is a special keyword indicating that this is the default export for this file. We can then import it somewhere else and the import instruction will appear in a second. We can also have a number of files in which we export several elements. Here a constant named clean, which contains a function at the end, and base data, which contains a number in a third file. We might need to import from person.js and utility.js because app.js requires import instructions. And here are some different import syntaxes you will see in this course. Person.js, as you can see, uses the default keyword. The default keyword simply means that if we import something from this file, it will always be our default export. So in this case, person is therefore constant in the import of person.js. We can name person whatever we want. That's why I printed it twice here. Person almost doesn't matter. It always refers to the thing you marked as default with the default keyword. For utility.js, it's a little different. We are importing here from two different constants, and therefore the import syntax uses braces to explicitly target specific elements of that file. These are called named exports. Because we are importing the content by name. We import the cleanup constant by name and base data by name because we didn't mark anything as a default value. So for JavaScript to know exactly what we are specifying, we need to give it the exact name, and the name goes between braces. By the way, you can also write this as an import statement with base data, clean, or the other way around. So this is all about imports and exports. You write all of this in your JavaScript files and you will use it a lot throughout this course. Now, as with all of these next generation JavaScript features, it's not going to work the same way in all browsers. Even the most modern browsers do not support all the features we will use in this project. Therefore, in the next course module, I will also show you how to quickly set up a project that finally compiles all the next generation JavaScript features into current generation JavaScript features, so that our developers can use the next generation JavaScript without us. So let's go back to imports and exports. This is the syntax that we use, and you'll see that it gets used a lot in this course. You can also see some variation because we can also write this differently when we have a default export. You have already seen that person is a name that you can choose yourself. It doesn't matter here if you don't use person or the other. If you have a named export, you must use the exact name defined in the file with the export keyword. You can also assign an alias, which you can again freely choose, in the file you import with the keyword as. Or, if you have several named exports in one file, you can import everything with this special character, then assign an alias, and then assign a package. In this case, it will be a JavaScript object that exposes all the constants and everything you can export to the other file as the owner, so that you simply group base data in order to access the export of things. It's up to you, and you'll see me using these things throughout the course. The most common use is the first one, return import braces something braces. We learn about importations and exportations. Another essential feature of JavaScript's next generation are classes. If you experience another programming language, you may already know about classes. Classes are essentially blueprints for objects. In our case here for JavaScript's objects, a class is created with the word class, and a class can have both properties and methods. Methods are simply functions attached to classes, and properties are variables attached to classes. We are going to use both of them in this course, while always explaining what we are doing. When we add such a property or method, a class is instantiated like this with the new keyword. And this may sound familiar to you if you worked a little bit with JavaScript. You may notice constructor functions. So classes are kind of a more convenient way to create constructor functions in order to create JavaScript objects with classes in plain form. Classes also support inheritance. This means that you have another class that you inherit from by taking all its properties and methods and potentially adding new ones. This might also sound familiar to you, since you might be noticing prototypes. Now let's look at classes in action. Let's create a new class here. I'm going to name it like this. Then you have the braces to mark the body of the class, and now we can start using the properties in its simplest form. A property is added by adding a constructor, which is a default function method. You can add to any class that will be executed whenever you instantiate the class, and the method is created with simply the name of the method in parentheses and then in braces. And then here we can now set the property with the keyword this, and we can write this name is equal to Mathieu. Print my name. We could simply output this name referring to the name property that we created. We can now use this class to store an instance in a constant with a person and then run it. If we now click, we see Mathieu. It is that simple to use a class. Now I said that class can also inherit. We can create a human class and add a constructor to define it. Gender equal male or female. Of course, it's as you wish. And now if person, which is a keyword, extends to a new human, now we inherit that property and that printGender method, and we can also use both of them on the person in order to call a person print gender like that. However, before we succeed, we're going to try it. An error will be displayed. We have to call the superconstructors in the derived class, and this is important. If you extend another class and implement the constructor, which you don't have to do, but if you do it, you have to add this super method in the constructor. It's a keyword that simply executes the parent constructor, which of course you have to fix to reset the parent class. So now you clearly see Mathieu and male. Obviously, you can now go into your person class and still set the gender here, which is not 100% accurate here for me, but this is just to show you that it works. We see now that we print woman, even though we still written print gender here, but it's extended by person. These are classes, and classes are used by React to create these components. At least this is one of the two ways to create components. Here's how you're going to see me use classes in this course, and it's important to understand that classes are just blueprints for JavaScript objects, and that they are very comparable to constructor functions, where inheritance is comparable to prototype. So in the last video, we learned about classes, properties, and methods, and we will in this video as well. Now, next generation JavaScript also offers a different syntax for initializing properties and methods. And in fact, it's this more modern syntax that I'm going to use in this course. That's why I want to show it to you here as well. You have already learned that properties are like variables that you associate with classes and objects, and methods are like functions attached to classes and objects. And you will learn more about this syntax where we define properties in the constructor functions. Now, there is a more modern syntax that avoids us to use this constructor function with the next generation of JavaScript, which we will use in this course. You can assign a property directly in your class with myProperty equal to value. So you skip the constructor function. Behind the scenes, this will still be transformed to use constructor functions, but you will have an easier time writing this for methods. It's pretty similar. This is the old way I showed you in the last video. Now, the next generation JavaScript method is to use the left syntax where you define a property. Just imagine a method as a property that stores a function as a value. So my method is equal to and then an arrow function. The main advantage of this syntax is that since you are using an arrow function as a property value here, the this keyword has no issues. That's exactly why we're going to use this syntax here, in the lower right corner, and the corresponding syntax in the lower left corner throughout this course. Let me show you the syntaxes. Let's go back to JSBean on the project we already worked on with the human classes. We can remove the constructor and this keyword and just set gender equal to male and print it. Gender can be equal to an arrow function where we do console log. Gender still uses the this keyword here when we contact the property. Although you can ignore this arrow for now, we don't need the constructor anymore and we don't need to call it super for that reason. Instead, we will call this name without it, equal to Mathieu and gender equal to female for instance, and print my name to an arrow function equal like this. Now if you delete this and run it, you'll get an error because it doesn't recognize the syntax you actually need. Go to the drop down menu where it says JavaScript and choose ES6. If you do that, and you press clear and then run, you will see Mathieu and female. You will still see the arrows on the left, but you can ignore them. This is the next generation JavaScript syntax that we will be using in this course. We have learned a lot about the classes and arrow functions. Now, let's go over new operators that you can use in the future in JavaScript and that we can already use today in our React project. The operators spread and rest are in reality only one operator written with 3 dots. It may seem strange, but the operator has only 3 dots. Now, launching spread or rest depends on where we use it. The spread operator is used to split the elements of the array or the properties of the object. So we extend it to array or object for instance. If we have an old array and we want to add all the elements of this old array to a new array, and add in addition element 1 and an element 2, this first syntax would be the one we would use. 3 dots in front of the array. Just extract all the elements and add it to a new array that we created with square brackets. And of course we can add more elements, So if we just use the normal syntax with square brackets to create an array, it is the same for the object. We create a new object with braces with the new accessory. Old object to extract all properties of the old object and their values and add them as a key value pair to the new object as a complement of the old one. Also, if there is a new property, it would be overwritten by a new accessory 5. So here, our property has priority. It's the spread operator. Now the rest operator is the same thing, but it is used differently. It is used to merge with a list of function arguments in an array, and this shows us where to use it. We use it in a list of function arguments. Here is an example. Sort args be an unlimited number of arguments, so an argument 2, 3, or else with 3 dots. We would write only one argument, but we can get several ones, and they will all be merged into an array, so we can then apply array methods to our argument list to do whatever we want with them with our conveniently stored arguments. Let's take a look on how to use them as such on JSBin. So let's start with the spread operator. I'm going to create an array of numbers, 1, 2, 3. You can add as much as you want. Now I want to create a new array, new number, and as you saw, spread is now used simply by adding 3 dots. Then the old array numbers, potentially, but you don't have to do it. A new number like 4, but again, this is optional. Now, if I write console.log a new number, and I click on run, it will display 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the spread operator. Let's see now the same thing for objects. I will create person here, where I have a name. Here we put 3 small dots person and below age 2 dots 21, and below again we will mark console.log and we will put new person like this. Now if I register the console new person, it displays object, age 21 years old, name Mathieu. So we have to take the person and distribute it to the new person, which is the spread operator. Now the rest operator, which is used less often and is used in a function, and you can of course use the arrow function ES6. We could have a filter function in which you decide the name and we get some arguments without you having to use them here. You can name it whatever you want here, but it has to have the 3 dots. Here we are going to return to the args key and we are going to integrate a filter. So here we'll get our element and then we could use the built-in arrow function to simply indicate the return like this. And here we will put L equal to 1. Maybe you don't know the value of the 3 equal signs. The 3 signs checks the equality of the types and values, so it must also be a number. But all of this has nothing to do with spread or rest. So at the bottom, we'll mark console.log filter, and on the other hand, we'll add this inside, and as at the beginning, if you remember well, we'll put 1, 2, 3. Of course, don't forget the commas. Now if you click on run, it displays 1 because we have filtered this array that writes with the rest operator with the 3 dots here. Rest and spread are written with 3 dots, and you now see them more often in this. So we have learned about spread and rest. Now there is a feature I want to cover in the next generation called destructuring. Destructuring allows you to easily extract array elements or object properties and store them in variables. When you first hear about this, it may sound like exactly what the spread operator does, but it's actually different. Spread removes all elements from all properties and distributes them to a new array or objects or to any other location. Destructuring allows you to extract single property elements and store them in variables for arrays and objects. Now for arrays, it looks like this. We have an array with 2 elements, Hello and Mathieu. Then we can use this strange syntax on the left side of the equal sign, which looks like an array creation. But we must not assign the variables A and B to Hello and Mathieu respectively. And for the same syntax with braces, and or in an array destructuring, the order is defined. What property do we take for destructuring of the object? This is the name of the property, so brace, named to brace on the left side, target the property name of the object on the right side and extract the value. This is why the age of the logging generates an undefined result. we don't remove this from the object here. So this is destructuring. Let's start with our array of numbers. It has the numbers 1, 2, 3, and now we want to get the number 1 and 2. Then we can use this array syntax to the left of the equal sign and choose the variables names of our choice, such as number 1 and number 2, and assign it an equal number to array. If I console now the logs number 1 and number 2 and press run, it displays 1 and 2. We're only getting 1 and 2. Now let's imagine that I only want 1 and 3. We change only the number here and the number there. And here I have added a comma, and if I click on run, it displays 1 and 3. It's a destructuring table. Now the destructuring of objects is also supported by our project because we use it in this course, but it is not supported by JS bin here, so I can't show it to you unfortunately. However, I have shown the syntax on the slide. This is the syntax where you use left braces to target a property with its property name. In this course, I will not use this destructuring syntaxes too often, but I wanted to inform you about their existence and the fact that it is a practical way to write some elements of a table or properties with their object values. See you on the next. Okay, so what we are going to learn today are things that you really need to keep in mind. The first feature or concept of JavaScript that I'm talking about is the fact that you have reference titles and primitive types. If I create a number like this one, it is a primitive type. That means that if I create a second number, num2, and put it equal to this number, it will create a real copy of number, therefore number 2 of course. Now if I put console log and that I go on my page of test, we can see that there is marked 1, so it copied the value in number 2. Now numbers, strings and booleans, these are so-called primitive types. Every time you reassign or store a variable in another variable, it will copy the value object arrays. These are reference types. But then let me show you what I mean. I create my personal object which just has a name here, and I now create a second person and a person assigned as value here. So now I put console.log with the second person in it, and if I go to the console, it will display the same value as the first person, but will not copy it instead. The object is stored in the memory, and in the constant person we store a pointer to that place in memory. And if we then assign a second person to second person, this pointer will be copied, so we can see that this is the case if we change person. Then you print here again a person with the name of Mathieu, because we had copied it and stored it in a second person and then modified it. Now if you go to the console, you will see the name. Here you can see the name Max. The name of the second person has also changed because it has just copied the pointer and points to the same object in memory as the person. So if we change the name of a person, we automatically change it to second person. Keep in mind that it's the same for arrays. If you copy an array in quotes like this, and then change an array element, everything will change in the copy array. This will become important in React because it can lead to unexpected behaviors. If you copy objects from array of this type, then you can manipulate an object in one place of the application and accidentally manipulate another use of the same object in another place of the application. So we're going to learn techniques to copy that immutably, which means we're going to copy that by actually copying the object and not just a pointer, because we can use that operator. Now we just need to create a new object person here and spread the properties of these persons. This will extract the properties and values of the object properties and add it to this object. I'll show you. Remember the 3 dots in the last video? Now, if we go here, it displays the name Mathieu. Even if we change the name to Max here, it will put Mathieu back because now we have created a real copy. It is important to realize and keep in mind that objects and arrays are reference types. If you reassign them, you copy the pointer and not the value. So if you want to do this operation in a real way, you will have to create a new object and just copy the properties and not the whole object. This is something important to keep in mind. Okay. In the last course, we looked at the reference of primitive types, an important thing to keep in mind when using JavaScript. Another thing we will see in this course are array functions. We are going to revise the good old table 1, 2, and 3, as we had done. Const numbers is equal 1, 2, 3, and we do not forget to put the comma between each figure. Now suppose we want to turn this into an array in which each number is doubled, so we have to double num array. This allows us to use an array function. we can take the array of numbers and call the map. The map is a built-in array method. All next-generation JavaScript methods work the same way, although it takes a function as input, and that function is an arrow function, but it could be a normal function. And then simply execute on each element of the array. So we'll do it like this, equal, and the arrow. Don't forget the parentheses, so here on each element of the array of the number 1, 2, and 3, what we get in this arrow function is a number at the end. Then we can simply return something, and what you have to do in this internal function depends on the function domain you use. So in the map function, we have to return the new value to which we want to transform the old one, so that we can return num2, and that it is executed on each element here. It will return 2, 4, and 6. So it will conveniently map all the returns to a new array, so a real new array that is then stored in double num array. So here, if we put instead of numbers double num array, now if I take a look at it, it gives me 1, 2, 3, and 2, 4, 6. Now I'm going to explain what these functions do when we use them. I just want to bring to your attention that they still have this function that is executed on every element, and that they are not really from the next generation of JavaScript, but from the current generation. Thank you for watching. Hello everyone, in this video I will show you an example of a project that we will build together. This project simply consists in looking at our expenses. It means we will look into the bar of 2021, we can see that in March I bought a new TV, and that in June I paid the insurance of my car. We will create these components little by little, and as you can see we can also add an expense. That means we will be able to put that I spent money for a PC and that it cost 1,000 euros. We will say that I bought it the 10th of August 2021. Here you can see in August 2021 we bought our PC which cost us 1,000 euros. So we're going to build this little by little, and I'm going to explain to you in details how it all works. So I invite you to go to the next course to start our little project. We had a first general overview of React and why we might want to use it in this course section. We will now dive into all the basics you need to know to create any type of React application. We will explore all the basic functionalities, and especially we will learn how to create user interfaces based on components. How to create user interfaces by adopting a concept called components, in fact adopted by React. And of course I will explain what exactly these components are and why React is also using them in this main section. Now, specifically for this, as I said, we will learn more about all the basic features that make up React, all the basic syntaxes. We will also learn about a feature called JSX, a special syntax called JSX. What is it and why do we use it? Then, as I also mentioned, we will also learn what its components are, but more importantly, how we can build our own components with React, and how we can use them, and how we can work with them. And we will learn how to work with data in a React application, because most web applications are not just about displaying static text, but about generating data or updating some data when things change on the screen. And this is what we are going to learn in this course section, but also in the next course sections in general. Now, of course, I don't want to teach these things by just using boring theory or slides, even though we'll have all the theory required. We will also build this first example project here. This example web application is entirely built with React and the following course section. And I say the next sections of the course because it turns out that React has a lot of basic functionalities and we will need a lot of those functionalities in this application. It may seem pretty trivial, but it's not. Once we finish this first application, which is not the only one we will do in the course, you will have learned just about all the important key concepts that you will need over and over again in all the React applications that you will do. But what is our first application? It's an expense tracking tool, and as we build it step by step, we'll uncover all the key concepts you've come to know when working with React. everyone and welcome to the start of the project. First of all, you will have to create a project React. Normally, you could find a video how to install React and how to install a project on our channel. After you have installed your project, you can go back to VS Code. Here we are on VS Code. I created a React exo folder where inside there is a styling setup. This is where we can start our project. Of course, if you have installed everything correctly, you should have the node module, the public and the src. We will start by opening the src, and inside normally you should have the app.js, index.css and the index.js. That's all you see, and if it is installed, it's good. Now how to open our styling setup. It's very simple, you will see. You just have to open your terminal, then in the terminal we'll do cd01 styling setup. Here it's to open folders in fact. You press enter in the folder, you press enter there, and it's good, you are in the folder. Then to enter this folder, we'll have to do an npm start to open our local. You press enter, and you normally wait a few seconds and it should open. Well, normally you should arrive on the logo of React, which runs continuously, but do not worry, I will show you the code so that you can have this page there, where it's written, let's get started. So I invite you to pause on the video to be able to note what is written. Here is the app.js, here is index.css, and index.js. Normally, if all that is good, or if you have opened your local, it will be good. So I invite you to go on the next. Project, I just want to analyze with you the React project. We will take a look in index.js. We can already see that we have a React DOM import. How can we import this? It's very simple. You can find it in the package.json and you have it right here. And we can import all of this directly into our project. If you open the public and go to the index.html and scroll down a little, we can see that there is the root. So for those of you who don't know what root is, the root is everything that's in it and that will be generated by the React DOM. It's to render a React element in a root DOM node to pass both of the React DOM.render method. And if we go back to the index.js, we can find the React DOM.render that I just talked about with the get element by ID root. So we can import everything that is in the package directly with the import, and this is what we will see through. Perfect, now we will see a small thing on React. So how does it work? You see it's very simple. As you can see, we are currently in the app.js. We have the app function, which is here. So what we are going to do is we are going to write a paragraph in the div where we will write course React. Now keep in mind that in standard JavaScript you will somehow select an element on the page, for example with the document getElementById, as we do here. Document.getElementById. Here we have the root here, which also comes in the index.js, which is there in the document getElementById. Afterwards, we can also make a document.createElement, and in brackets you put the p. We can do that, and we can also do const para is equal, and then we will define the content of the text. That means we will write para.text content, and there we will put our course React. And here we will add a dot append para between brackets. This is actually what you would do in standard JavaScript. This follows an imperative approach as you give clear step-by-step instructions, and this is what JavaScript and the browser really do. Of course, we are not going to keep all this because you see it's taking space. Otherwise, here's how it works. And now we're going to build our first component at this expense tracker. Perfect, now we will see a small thing on React. So how does it work? You see it's very simple. As you can see, we are currently in the app.js. We have the app function, which is here. So what we are going to do is we are going to write a paragraph in the div where we will write course React. Now keep in mind that in standard JavaScript you will somehow select an element on the page, for example with the document getElementById, as we do here. Document.getElementById. Here we have the root here, which also comes in the index.js, which is there in the document getElementById. Afterwards, we can also make a document.createElement, and in brackets you put the p. We can do that, and we can also do const para is equal, and then we will define the content of the text. That means we will write para.text content, and there we will put our course React. And here we will add a dot append para between brackets. This is actually what you would do in standard JavaScript. This follows an imperative approach as you give clear step-by-step instructions, and this is what JavaScript and the browser really do. Of course, we are not going to keep all this because you see it's taking space. Otherwise, here's how it works. And now we're going to build our first component at this expense tracker. To begin, we will create a folder in the src called components. And when it's created, you click on it, then on the file at the top, and there you will mark capital D expenses with a capital I item.js. And then we'll be able to start writing. We will put function expense item, return h2 expenses item. So this is our first very basic custom component. Of course, it is quite similar to the application component. Afterwards, it's always the same. We will export this file, so we will create the default export function expense item. Now we can bring it in another file and we will import it in the app.js. How to do it? Well, you do import expense item. Normally it puts it directly here in this path. It indicates to JavaScript that you are looking for an expense item file in a component folder. And now what's good is changing the paragraph with this one. Really don't forget the capital letters, it's really important. And if you go to our browser, we will see that it says expense item, and that was where we wrote the expense item, and that puts it on our website. Very well, now we have seen how to customize our component. So we're going to move forward in the project, i.e. we now need to display the amount, display the expense item, and display the date. So we're going to find ourselves in the expense item, and we're going to be able to remove that. What we're going to do now is add a parenthesis. You'll see that it's marked differently if you just put a div, and in the div you just put the amount, i.e. 290 euros. Then imagine you want to put another div, even if you mark it inside, imagine insurance, you'll see that it's marked in red. So how do we do it? It's very simple. We'll keep our current div, and in this div we'll put another div so that we don't get any errors. Here in this div we are going to mark March 28. That's the date of our expense. Then we add another div, and in this div we will put H2. And in this H2 we will put car insurance. And below that, you will just put a div and we will display the price. 290 euros is the price of our insurance for the car. Here, don't forget to put the semicolon at the end, it's very important. Very good, and after that you can save, very important. And then here you can see it's written 28 March 2022, car insurance, 290 euros. So we have created expense item. What we are going to do now is the same. We will click on the components. We make a new file, and this file you call it expense item.css, item with capital I. You will have to copy the CSS code that's here. I'll pass it to you like this so that you can see. maybe pause it and write it down. Now let's go back to the expense, and as you can see here, I've added a class name. So it's very simple. We're going to do expense-item for the date div. Normally everything is good. Our expense item here is the date, our expense item description is car insurance, and expense item price is 290 euros. And also I forgot to tell you that the expense item price and the expense item description is not 1 but 2 underscore, otherwise it will not work. So if we go on our web page here, it worked. We have the 28th of March, insurance car, and 290 euros circled in purple. It displays correctly. I will see you on the next. Alright, after adding the date, the car insurance and the price, we will add a constant. Let's store a date using the built-in date constructor provided with JavaScript. We are going to put ourselves here, so we're going to mark const expense date. Don't forget to put a capital D is equal. Then we are going to do the same thing again. We're going to write const this time. It's still going to be expense, but this time we'll mark car insurance. And a third one, always the same, expense amount in a date. And don't forget to add the date 28/02/2022. Here we have our amount. Normally it's all good. Do not worry if it's underlined, it will be removed. Then after that, we will go back to the return here. We will make some changes. So here you can remove all that. And inside you put expense date dot to ISO string, like this. This one you don't touch. We're just going to change that in the H2. We are going to add expense title, and here you're going to remove that to add a $sign. In there you put expense amount. Normally you have it here. We have added our expense date, our expense title, and our expense amount. And now with that we can move on. Then what we're going to do is replace everything that was here. That is to say, here the dates props, you replace it by 3div with written months, year, and days. Then what we will do at the top is very simple. We will remove all that and we will replace it by other const. And this const will be named const months, const days, and const years. Then you fill in props.date to local string with a capital L, and in parentheses en-fr, months long. Then after that you mark const, year, props, date, it's the same, you just change the year. Here on the other hand, it will not be that. So here we are going to mark it like this. And we will be able to see that there it is displayed well. We still have some small problems, but that is not serious, we will fix them in the next video, and we will be able to move on the next chapter. Now we will go to the component and we will create a new file that we will call expensedate.js. And then after that we're going to write function depenseDate, and underneath, as always, you're going to put export depenseDate. Here's where we have it, right here. Don't forget the semicolon. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the expenseItem.js. We're going to take everything we have written, take from the first to the last const, we'll put it here in the expense date. Then here you mark props, and also I have done a little mistake on the last video. Here you don't put two local string, you instead put get full year. So we're going to go back to the expense item, and here we're going to delete this. We're going to delete all the consts. There's no point in keeping them. You will understand that later. Then what you do is the same as for the const. You copy this, you delete it. We go into expense date, and they're still the same here, but before pasting it, you mark return. And there we have the div. And on the other hand, I forgot to put it here. You still put the div right there, and you put a semicolon as well. And then still here in expense item, what we're going to do is import like this. Normally it's going to put it directly if you have automatic hiding. In fact, it's to link the two pages, so we will import expense date here. It's still the same use, but it's a different way of doing it. What we are going to do is we are going to delete the last date expense. You add a slash space, and then we are going to go into the app.js. At the bottom where you put expense.item, what we're going to do, it's exactly the same. We're going to delete that, and in fact at first it's going to give us an error, but if we add a slash, that error will be gone. And then after that it's perfect, you can save. And then what we're going to do is with the expense date, here we're going to add date is equal to props.date. We will create a file in the component that will be called expensedate.css, like this. Then in the expense dates, you can enter this code there, so I'll let you copy it. We have the expense date of the months, the expense date of the years, and the expense date of the days. I'll give you time to copy all of that. Then in the expense date, at the top, we're going to mark import./expense-item.css. We are going to go into the return here, and what we're going to do is we're going to delete all that, enter the div, and in the div we're going to put class name with a capital N, expense date. Don't forget also to put the month, the year, and the day between the div. Normally, after that, it is perfect. We will meet again for the next class. Very well, after all that, we will continue to create other files. Still in component, we will create this time the file expenses.js. Only unlike the others, where there is item or date before, you create expense.js. And another file where the same, you name it expenses, but this time you mark .css after it. And this time what we are going to do is you're going to take all the code here, which is in app.js, and you're going to put it directly here in the expense.js. We are going to transfer it to this page. Then you're going to import the expense items on the page expense.js, and you also import the expense.css. It will always be the same use, it is just a transfer on the other page, do not worry about it. Then we will go to the expense.css we just created, and you put expense, it's that simple. Then we can name a component card because it's a specific card aspect and it's not a term. We're going to do map.js, don't forget to put the very important capital C. Usually this means some kind of container look with rounded corners and drop shadows. That's why I choose map as the name here. So all this will be in the form of a card. So we're going to start writing. Inside we will put return and we'll put a div, and in this div we will be able to put what returns to us. That is to say, we will return the name card. And as always, do not forget to put export with a capital C. Then we will create another folder that will be map.css, and before filling anything we will go back to the map.js and we will import map.css. Now we will be able to start on the map.css. We will need two things in the expense.css, the box shadow and the border radius. With these two we will also be able to put our months. We will go in the expense item.js, and here instead of class name we will put card. Same down below, and between these two there we will be able to import card so that it is recognized in our page. We are going to go back to map.js, and normally you should remember that we did it in the last class, is the props.children. So children, it's a reserved name, okay? We're not putting children on this map. I'm sending a placeholder name accessory, and in fact it won't do anything for now, but it's nothing children related. Just above return, we will add a const class card plus props.className. As you can see here, the class is underlined so that it doesn't make this error. What we're going to do is just delete the map, and in it we're going to add the word class, and you can see that it's gone, and now our code is fine. We will now go back to the expense.js, and there we will import map from like this. Here, as before, we can remove the div and replace it with map, and of course we also need to change it at the bottom. See you in the next lesson. So for this part, I have already entered everything, and I will show everything to you, so you can just pause and copy it. So we will start with the const date, expense title, and expense amount. That's to display all the values. Here in the function expense item, put props. I will explain to you why later. There will be now a small change in app.js. As you can see, I've added some things already. We'll start by adding const expense. It will be for expenses and to indicate what we are going to spend on toilet paper, the new TV, car insurance, and the PC. I will let you copy all of this with the ID, the title, the amount, and you do this every time, and you mark the prices and the date. Then normally here there should be only expense item. What you're going to do is make an expense item with the title, the amount, and the date as always, and you mark 0. 0 is for the first item, and for the second item it will be 2, and 3 and 4 for the third and fourth item. And here is normally what will display expenses amount, and there you put props.titles. It is thanks to that, thanks to these props here, that we will be able to display in our web page all that we marked in the app.js, the insurance, the cars, the PC, the new TV, and so on. And then you can see for yourself what is displayed. There is toilet paper, new TV, car insurance, and PC. And then we will add here props.amount and here props.date. There, if we take a look, we have the prices that have changed and the dates that have changed as well. See you in the next class. Alright, remember this section was about components. It was about understanding the most important concept of React. It is building user interfaces by building and combining components. We learn how to share data between components through this concept of accessories. Now maybe you've already noticed one important thing with all these components that we build. In the end, we simply split our code into multiple files and building blocks, so that if we wanted to have more than one expense item, we can simply use our elements and expense components. We can simply use other custom expense item components multiple times instead of repeating all this code. That's the idea behind the components. In the end, what ends up on the screen are only default HTML elements. This is an important thing to remember and something important to keep in mind. The application we have created so far is great because we had the chance to learn more about components and props. These are two of the most important concepts you get to know when working with React. In the end, it's still static. The data here is set in stone, and that's still what we're going to change in the next course. In the first section, we're going to bring that to life when we get to learn more about the concept called state. Now we are going to go in the app.js to import React. So as usual, it doesn't change. You always write import. This time you put a capital R React from, and between the quotes you put React. We import React in this page, in the app.js page. Now let me show you how this code would be displayed if we didn't use this syntax. We are going to go to the top and we're going to write return like before to import React with a capital R dot create element with a capital E. Between the parentheses, you put a div. The second argument is an object that configures this particular element. It's an object that defines all the attributes of this element. This div doesn't have any attributes at the moment, so here we can pass in an empty object. The third argument is now about the content between the opening and closing tags. You can now have an infinitely long list of arguments that are two elements with different content between the opening tags. What we are going to do is once again mark React, and we are going to copy the create element that we created at the beginning. We are going to put the parentheses back in, but this time you're going to put the h2 in the parentheses, so you'll understand why later. And in the h2, as with the div, we will add this. So that it's a bit more readable, we will of course arrange it like this. Inside we will put let's get started, and below you take the same thing, React create element, you paste it here like this. And in it we will put expense. Still in expense you put a comma, item, expense. Now I invite you to copy import React, and we will put it everywhere in our component. We have to put it in all our folders, it's very important. Of course, we will revert to our first code, it's much more practical to use this code, but at least you know we can use this way of doing things too. We will meet again for the So after all that, what you are going to do now, as you can see on the left, you have a lot of folders, and sometimes when you are on an assignment with a client and other developers, you have a lot of documents on the side. Now what we're going to do is in the component, we're going to create a new folder, and this folder, we're going to call it expense. We're also going to create a second folder that we're going to call UI. In it, we're going to put the map.js and the map.css. And in the expense, we're going to put everything that is expense related. Here, like that. At least we don't get confused and the folders are well organized. Think about doing this because when you are in missions, there will be a lot of files, and if you don't do this, you will be completely lost afterwards. It's up to you to see how you are going to arrange your files, but this is the most important thing to do. Think about it. Alright, you are going to see something else with this code. I think you will remember the arrow functions. If you don't, I invite you to go back to the JavaScript video where we worked on the arrow functions, like this. And what we are going to do is we're going to change all of this in all of our files. You don't have to if you feel better with the code from before, but if you want to test it, I invite you to do like I did here. In const arrow function, same for here, in all the expenses. Of course, there's a lot more to explore than that on React, and the next thing we're going to explore is how we can make this a little bit more interactive. Because right now, everything is static, this data never change, and we want a website that's much more interactive for the user and much more enjoyable. That's what we're going to see in the next course. We will take a closer look at user interaction and user event management, and we will take a look at the very important concept of state in React applications. But for the moment, in the application we have built and with the knowledge we have gained so far, we can only build static applications where the state never changes and where we always produce exactly the same thing. You want to have applications that are interactive so that they can react to user click and user input, that are reactive so that the application also exchanges when certain things happen. In this course module, we are going to look at handling user events such as clicks, and then we are going to look at how we can make sure that what's visible on the screen changes and that we can reach a different target state. And to do that, we are going to look more closely at the concept of state. We are going to learn how we can manipulate state and move from state A to state B if we can. And in general, in this section, we are going to learn more about some key concepts. We will take a closer look at user interaction and user event management, and we will take a look at the very important concept of state in React applications. But for the moment, in the application we have built and with the knowledge we have gained so far, we can only build static applications where the state never changes and where we always produce exactly the same thing. You want to have applications that are interactive so that they can react to user click and user input, that are reactive so that the application also exchanges when certain things happen. In this course module, we are going to look at handling user events such as clicks, and then we're going to look at how we can make sure that what's visible on the screen changes and that we can reach a different target state. And to do that, we are going to look more closely at the concept of state. We are going to learn how we can manipulate state and move from state A to state B if we can. And in general, in this section, we're going to learn more about some key concepts. Alright, we're going to go in the expense item, and in it we're also going to add a button underneath this div just before we close the map, like this. And we're going to mark change title. And if we go here, that puts the change title behind the prices. And we're going to add the on-click button. We're going to put the brackets, and after the brackets we're going to put, like last time, an arrow function. And then after the brackets we're going to put console.log, and between brackets clicked. And normally it should be good. This is one of the first options you can do with the button, and the second one you can use is to keep the one click, then remove all that, and in it we're going to mark click handler. This is an event there, so you can see that it's not recognized because at the top of the return we're going to add a const click handler is equal, and between brackets we're going to put an arrow function, then a hook, and we're going to put console.log and between the brackets clicked. And if you look carefully, it's not underlined anymore. So that's how we can add event listeners to our elements and to all these embedded HTML elements. It's a function that's not called elsewhere in our code. It's a function that we attach to an event listener so that it's eventually called by React when the event occurs. Which is why I name my event handler functions like this, ending with handler. But again, this is just my preference. You'll see it in some project and might consider doing it, but it's not mandatory. Now with this, we know how we can react to events. In the next course, we will see how we can change what appears on the screen. Reacting to events is an important first step. How can we now change what appears on the screen? Well, we want to change the title when we click on button, so here's how to do it. We could create a variable with let, which could be name title props.title. Then we will use another variable at the bottom, so you remove props and leave title. Now what we're going to do is putting the title here. We're going to put updated here, and then we're going to change and put console.log. We're going to remove the clicked, and we're going to put title. Let's imagine now I press change title. It puts updated 1, 2, 3, 4. We can do this indefinitely. The only problem with this is that the action is repeated. The action goes through all this when the application is initially rendered, but afterwards it's done. It also works because of this. It's very important. That's why at the beginning of the course I told you to put it in, because without it, it won't work. And for the next course, we're going to talk about state. It's something very interesting, so I invite you to go to the next course. Now we want to import some unique parts from the React library, and we want to import a function here which is called useState. This is a function provided by the library, and this function allows us to set values as a state. Changing its values should be reflected in the function of this component called again. Which is a key difference from the regular variable we are using here. Below const expense item, we are going to mark useState. You put brackets in it. You're going to add props.title. Now you know it well. And what we're going to do is behind useState, we are going to add a const there. You put square brackets, and in those square brackets, you put title, comma, set title. And between useState and set title, you put the equal sign. And so what we are going to do is here we're going to change. We're going to put set title, and we're going to put updated in parentheses like this. So this function will be updated. You can remove the let.title, this one. If it gives you an error, it's very simple. Just remove the equal sign and it will be good. And then you can save. I will see you in the next class. Alright, now under const title, comma, set title, we are going to put a console.log and we are going to put inside expense item evaluated by React. Normally, if you press F12 on your browser and you look at it, it will show you expense item evaluated by React, which means that it works. For it to work, you have to go to your browser and click directly on change title. And when you click on change title, it should say updated. With that now sorted out, I'll see you on the next course. Alright, after doing all that, we are going to go back to the expense form in the input text part, and we are going to mark on change. Then underneath the expense form, we are going to add a const title change handler, and as usual, you put parentheses and a now function like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the title change handler and put it inside here. We are going to go back to const and we're going to add a console.log. We are going to mark title change like this, and then we're going to add an event, and instead of title change we're going to put the same as above, event.target.value. Normally it should be good. And also in the last lesson I forgot to put this code there in the form expense. I will let you copy everything and you should be all set for the next lesson. I will see you in the next course.